Welcome everyone to Things Around 8. Dear friends, in this video we will talk about why Iran has not yet done anything to avenge the latest Israeli attacks against the terrorist groups it funds. And if you are not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any news. To answer the question in the title of the video, we first need to understand why Iran sees Israel as its biggest enemy in the Middle East. Regarding Iranian hatred of Israel, it is important to note that it was not always like this. It all started with the Islamic Revolution of 1979, when Iran, under the leadership of Ayatollah Khomeini, began to adopt a strongly anti-Israel view. They began to see Israel as an illegitimate state in the heart of the Muslim world. And why is that? The answer is simple. Iran's new theocratic government was based on opposition to the West and to any nation that represented what they called imperialism, with Israel personifying precisely that view. But this sentiment has not remained just an ideological one. Iran has begun to directly support Palestinian groups, such as Hamas and Islamic Jihad, which are fighting against Israel. For the Iranian government, supporting the Palestinian cause is almost a religious and political imperative. They present themselves as defenders of Palestine, while they see Israel as the oppressor. But it doesn't stop there, because there is also the geopolitical issue. The Middle East is a battleground for power and influence. On the one hand, Iran wants to expand its presence and support allies such as Hezbollah in Lebanon and militias in Syria and Iraq. On the other, Israel sees this as a direct threat to its security. And it is not just an indirect dispute. In fact, what we are seeing is a true proxy war between these two countries. Iran funds and arms these groups, while Israel responds with attacks on Iranian targets in Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen. Both are trying to avoid a direct confrontation, but this shadow war continues in full swing. And if there is one point that really intensifies this rivalry, it is the Iranian nuclear program. Israel considers the possibility of an Iran with nuclear weapons an existential threat. For Israel, preventing Iran from developing nuclear weapons is a matter of survival. Iran, on the other hand, sees Israeli threats as a justification to continue developing its nuclear capabilities and prepare against possible attacks. All of this creates a cycle of mutual distrust that only makes things worse. And of course, we cannot forget the role of international allies. Israel is one of the United States' greatest partners, while Iran considers the United States its greatest enemy. This unconditional support of the Americans for Israel only intensifies the animosity between Iran and Israel. And there is another important factor, the Abraham Accords. With these agreements, Israel has normalized relations with several Arab countries, such as the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, with Saudi Arabia itself making it clear that as soon as this war ends, it will also normalize its relations with Israel. For Iran, this is seen as an attempt to isolate it politically and curb its influence in the Middle East. It is also interesting to note that over the years, Iran's anti-Israel rhetoric has become a pillar of legitimacy for the Iranian regime. The government presents itself as a leader of the resistance against Israel, which internally helps to unite the country against a common enemy. Externally, it also reinforces Iran's role as a defender of the Islamic cause and the oppressed in the Muslim world. And this is why Iran hates Israel so much and has done so much to attack it, with a major element of Iran's actions being the creation, financing and training of terrorist groups in the region, such as Hamas and Islamic Jihad in the Gaza Strip, the Houthis in Yemen, and of course, Hezbollah, created by Iran itself in 1982 with the purpose of spreading the Islamic Revolution throughout the Middle East. For Iran, it is extremely important that these groups are not destroyed, because it is through them that Tehran can attack Israel without running the risk of the Israelis directly counterattacking Iran. But if this is the case, why did Iran not respond to the audacious silent attack that on July 31, 2024, eliminated Ismail Haniyeh, leader of the terrorist group Hamas? An attack that is important to remember occurred inside Iran. And because Iran is adopting a much less aggressive discourse, despite Israel having destroyed the leadership of the Lebanese terrorist group Hezbollah, even eliminating its leader Hassan Nasrallah in a destructive attack on the group's headquarters in Beirut. Iran does not do this for a simple reason: it is afraid of the Israeli response. Between April 13 and 14, 2024, Iran launched 170 drones, 30 cruise missiles, and 120 ballistic missiles against Israel in revenge for an Israeli attack that on April 1st eliminated a key Iranian commander in Damascus. That was the largest missile and drone attack in history, even larger than the attacks Russia has carried out against Ukraine. If Iran did that to avenge the death of a commander, what would it have to do to avenge the death of the Hamas leader on Iranian territory and, more recently, the death of the leader of Hezbollah and the entire leadership of that group? The Iranian response would have to be proportionally much larger, which would pose a very great risk to Iran itself, since Israel may consider this response disproportionate. The Iranian attack in April, despite being gigantic, was seen by Israel as proportional, since 99% of the Iranian missiles and drones were intercepted. But if Iran launches thousands of missiles and drones, which is something the Iranians can do, since they have such an arsenal, many of these missiles and drones will get past the defenses and cause great devastation in Israel. This could lead the Israelis to consider the Iranian response disproportionate, thus reserving the right to respond. A response that will certainly be directed at Iran's nuclear weapons program, which would be destroyed. Not to mention, of course, Israeli strikes targeting the leaders of the theocratic regime, such as the Ayatollah himself. Therefore, Iran did not respond to the death of the Hamas leader and is apparently not very willing to respond to the death of the entire Hezbollah leadership, because it knows that if Israel responds, Iran will inevitably suffer irreparable damage to important infrastructure and programs, a risk they cannot afford to take. And if you are not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any news.